spending the day together, that's absolutely.
I gotta leave right at noon.
No, we're a little short.
Good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 13 meeting of the Commons. We have agendas here. If you have not picked up one, you can probably find one somewhere. We're going to have a special presentation today on the arts and economic prosperity. We have to get first, we have to take care of some business, and that is the election of new officers for next year. And whoever is elected today to be president immediately takes over. Just want you to know. Let's get started. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of November 6th?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of November 6, 2017. Any discussion? No changes? All right, call the roll.
Okay, Shore,
Yes.
Thomason,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
All right, now we need to elect a chair and a vice chair. I don't think we have any other offices, do we?
We don't have
Okay.
any money, so we can't. That's right.
I'd like to move John Camp serve as Chair of the City County Commons for
Second.
2018.
It's been moved and seconded that John Camp move up from vice chair to chair of this board. Any other nominations? No other nominations? Looks like you've got it. All right, let's,
I think you officially need to call the roll.
yeah, we probably do need to call the roll.
Schob,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Hamp,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Amundson,
Yes.
Avery.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
You have-
well, I guess I assume my duties. Thank you. I'm no longer in vice.
Do we need a vice?
We need a vice chair, so
We
I
have
would
to have
accept
vice chair.
nominations. And typically, we've had, if the city has chair, then the county has vice chair. If we want to follow that tradition. Do I hear nominations?
I move
Deb
that
Shore.
I move that Deb Shore be the vice chair.
Second.
We have a nomination seconding of Deb Short. Do I hear any other candidates? Going once, twice, sold?
We probably ought to mention that it is customary that we alternate between the city and the county. I don't know if people know that, but
Yeah.
that's been the
Thank you.
custom.
I'd be honored to serve as your Vice Chair.
Thank you. Call the roll. Could we call the roll, please?
Sure. Amundson,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And I'd like to do one thing as chair, just have us introduce ourselves. We've got a big audience there. I think you may all know us, but just as a courtesy to you, and we do have name tags here, but Larry, why don't you start?
I'm Leirion, Leirion. That's a tough one. Gaylor Baird on the City Council.
Maybe it's your name and who you're with.
Okay, Carl Eskridge, City Council.
Deb Shore, County Board.
Bill Avery, County Board.
John Camp with the Lincoln City Council.
Benny Schob, Lincoln City Council.
Roma Amundson, Lancaster County Commissioner.
Tori Karkowski, Lancaster County Clerk's office.
And this is one of our privileged groupings where the county and the city get together. So with that, we will go on at 11:05, where we've got a tight agenda here, and I know some members have to leave promptly, so Brian Seek, come on up. And
Thanks for having us.
Yes, introduce yourself, please, and any guests you have or other.
Sure. So my name is Brian Seck. During my day job, I'm the employment skills developer for Prosper Lincoln. I'm speaking to you today as a volunteer for the My LNK app, which was a result of Leadership Lincoln. And I would ask Mikhail from Leadership Lincoln to stand, and then also if everyone could stand from the team who helped develop the app, if they're not already standing. Yeah.
How about quick introductions of who you're with?
I'm Matt Will with Don't Panic Labs.
Lori McCarthy, Don't Panic Labs.
Ryan Heyer with BVH Architecture.
Corinne Sturdy with Westgate Bank.
Katie Cook with Klein Williams.
Mike Hodge, Olson Associates.
Matt Brokout, American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network.
And Mikhail, you didn't wave enough so people know you.
Mikhail Leadership.
Thank you. Okay, Brian, go for it.
All right. For Leadership Lincoln, we were in the Fellows Program last year, and for the first time, Leadership Lincoln service projects were broken up into 5 different groups. Usually the Leadership Lincoln Fellows group does one big service project. So for our service project, we decided to pursue a new idea of an old resource. So for many years, the Center for People in Need and Department of Health and Human Services have compiled community resource handbooks. These are big 90-page books that many of us in the human services world have mostly memorized over the years. The struggle has always been when a family's in crisis, they might not know about all the resources that are available. Lincoln is an incredibly generous town that has many services, nonprofit, city, and state. Our goal is how do we reach folks so they contact and utilize them. So we thought to ourselves, how could we do that? And we decided to try to pursue a phone app. So many of you already know poverty isn't always what it looks like or what people think it is. Poverty in Lincoln is mostly a single white mom, 3 kids, high school education, what many of us would call unskilled. I hate that word with a strong passion as a workforce development professional. My job is to help people move from part-time jobs to full-time careers. You cannot do that if you're not stable, if you don't have food stability, if you don't have resources, if you don't have diapers. All those resources are available in Lincoln. Our goal is to help connect them. So why an app if you're thinking, if folks are in poverty, why a phone app? The answer is people have a phone. It's the last thing to go in a traumatic situation because a phone is the way that you get a call for an interview. A phone is the way that if your kid is sick, it's how the school calls you, and you better answer when LPS calls if your kid is sick. I say that as a former LPS employee. For 3 years, I served as the homeless outreach specialist for Lincoln Public Schools, working with families. What we also know is a significant portion of families who are low income don't have internet at home. So the trick of this app is that once you download it, it works offline. So if you're at your kid's school, you download the app, you take it home, you're back at your apartment that doesn't have internet or cellular service. Many of our families don't have a cell phone subscription. The app still works. And this is really kind of the number one lesson that we've thought about is that to have resource utilization, you have to have knowledge and connection. It's not enough to tell somebody about a resource once. They have to be able to know about it, connect to it, and then use it. As you can see, we have tons of resource hubs here in Lincoln for services. Our American Job Center is a walk-in job center right across the street, almost across the street, in the Southeast Community College building downtown. 211 is United Way's phone system to call and ask about resources, and also everyone you see here. So our goal for the app is not just for families in trauma to download the app. It's for all of us in this room, because all of us know somebody who might need some help. Maybe somebody from our church, maybe somebody from our neighborhood, maybe one of our coworkers. So the idea is how can you increase access to resources that already exist? So I'm going to ask Matt Will to come up here and talk a little bit about the technology. As you can see, tons of people came together to make this happen. The Community Health Endowment of Lincoln also gave us about $5,000 to do some marketing. But Matt's going to talk a little bit about the technology.
Just use the key down.
So here's our team that worked on the project last summer, and Lori McCarthy and myself have continued to support the project on through into the school year. The people who worked on it were all high school students, so it's great to have involvement from our community. And so What we did is we kind of use our internship as a guinea pig program to test new technologies and learn them. And so when Brian and his team came to us saying we need to build an app and we need to be able to use it offline, I had recently been at a technology conference and had heard about some things that we could possibly use. And so we set out our interns about using this technology. And so the two main technology we've used is one from Google, which is called Firebase. It allows us to keep the data updated and also store everything offline. So let's say Brian doesn't have internet access on his phone. He can download the app, get all the data that first time, and then the next time that he comes online, all of that data is automatically synced down to his phone without having to download a new version of the app or anything like that. And so it makes it a real quick, easy thing for Brian to stay up to date. And having it up to date is really important because as we learn, some of these resources that are in these books are out of date very quickly. And so as people who run the programs change over time, we need to be able to push out those updates. And there's nothing more frustrating than having information for a resource that you try and go and search out and it ends up being wrong. And so then the other technology we used is something called NativeScript, which allows us at the same time to build for Android and iOS. And so with one single code base, we can quickly and rapidly make changes and push out the app to both major app platforms.
Excellent. So this is what the app looks like itself. It's a really simple design on purpose. In fact, we've got a good story that we probably don't have time for, but we can talk about some other time that Apple rejected us the first time because they didn't think it was fancy enough. It's not supposed to be fancy. It's supposed to work, Tim Cook, so settle down. So the app itself basically has four features. Category, which is the second from the left there. Children and Family, Education, Employment, Food, and Health. Department of Health and Human Services and the Center for People in Need have been incredible partners in this process to merge together these two books. The DHHS book was Lincoln and Lancaster County. The Center for People in Need book was mostly focused on Lincoln. So we brought them together. So it's really every service that we know of in Lancaster County. So when you get to an individual description, you can see the Lincoln Bike Kitchen there, so it has information. At the bottom, there's a button that says Report Incorrect Data. So each individual organization, it's their responsibility. If there's something wrong or something has changed, a phone number has changed, an address has changed, a service has changed, you hit the button, it brings up an email, and then that email can be sent to the Center for People in Need, and we'll make an update. So we're not trying to track down every organization in Lincoln and Lancaster County. Organizations are hearing about this app, and it's their responsibility to make sure that it is correct. If you're thinking to yourself, Benny Shoeb gets up there and decides he wants to impersonate Lincoln Bike Kitchen because he would do something like that, we would only accept a change from an email domain of the organization. So if it's bshoeb@lincoln.ne.gov, that won't work. It needs to be bshoeb@lincolnbikekitchen.org. Last is, I think my favorite part is the calendar. This is every single place you can get free food in Lincoln today. When we're talking about our families in trauma, what they're looking for is a resource they can access today. There is tons of food in this town. Also, it has every health resource. So Clinic with a Heart, People's City Mission, Blue Stem Health, which was formerly the People's Health Clinic, Lutheran Family Services, Health 360, all that information is up here. Those services on the calendar are only services that don't change. So if Carl's Church has a one-time Thanksgiving dinner, that's not on there. This is really only for reoccurring events.
And one of the other things is important phone numbers. We've actually changed it so those important phone numbers show up at the very top of the list. I myself was able to use the important phone numbers the other day because as I was driving home, the railroad crossing at 27th and Highway 2 was malfunctioning. Instead of me trying to dig through on my phone and try and find a website where I can find the non-emergency number for the police, I fired up the app, went to important phone numbers, non-emergency, and hit dial. And it connected me right away.
That's amazing. this is just bullets for us to make sure that we don't forget to talk about stuff. This is why we do this. So browsing history is not tracked. When we beta tested this app with Friendship Home, Fresh Start, agencies that work with women experiencing domestic violence, they asked to make sure that the app does not have an account feature nor any kind of history. So we don't know what people are looking at. We do know if they've downloaded it or if they've opened it. We don't know what they're looking at. Domestic violence information is scattered throughout the app on purpose. So that way, if a woman who's experiencing domestic violence is looking at something, she can be looking at that, hit back, and there's no history. So that's something that was a request from agencies and something that I wouldn't have thought of, and I was ashamed that I didn't think of that, because when I was homeless outreach, almost all the families I worked with became homeless due to domestic violence. All right. Contact information. This is the Center for People in Need's email address. Any updates or any new organizations that weren't in the 2017 version of these resource books can send an email to the Center for People in Need. In real life, his name's Gene, but that's his email. And all the updates are done through the center. The app itself is owned by Leadership Lincoln in a collaboration with the Center for People in Need. But with our last 5 minutes, I'd be happy to take any questions, and also if any of the group wanted to come up and maybe just share a little bit about their experience, or not so much. Yeah, any questions?
I just a comment. High school students.
Yes, we
Talk
got
about that. I mean, that to me is just amazing.
Well, they're like tiny little humans that are 10 times as smart as us. It's really kind of embarrassing. The high school students came to us through the Career Academy, through LPS and First Job Lincoln, but Matt, maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, so we wanted to make them help them to expand their horizons. So the design of the app, the layout of everything, that was all them. We actually set them down on the first day and said, okay, this is the app that we're going to be building. We want you three to come up with your own unique designs, then collaborate with each other to come out with the final design. And that was just the very first step in them, learning to, what it's like to actually create a full application.
Commissioner Amundsen has a
Yeah, and
question.
maybe I missed it, but how do we download it? Do we go to the App Store?
Great question.
Yeah, so it's available in both the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store.
Okay.
And just search for My LNK.
Okay.
Thank you for the work on this, all of you. I noticed you have a link to StarTran in the app, which is helpful with information about transportation and the cost of passes. Is there any other information from the city or the county that you would like access to that you have yet to secure, or is there anything we can do to support your efforts, or you feel like you've got what you need?
Yeah, many of the city departments have updated their information if something has changed. So we're always open for any updates. We know that services change, routes change, and that's great. I think that the city has been really collaborative in putting this together. So I don't think there's anything new that we would need. We would only ask that if something changes, just to let us know so we can make the change in the app. Matt touched on this, but the magic thing about this app, as far as I'm concerned, is it doesn't have versions. Like sometimes you turn on your phone and it says you need a new version of this app. Do you want to download it? This doesn't have that. It automatically updates anytime that you're under cellular or Wi-Fi service. So if a family doesn't have internet for a week because they're at their home, but then they come back to LPS, just being under the LPS public Wi-Fi will update the app. It's pretty amazing.
In regard to that, I see Diane Gonzalez here with Citizen Information Center. Would that be our central point, Diane, to work with Leadership Lincoln to exchange changes? Because invariably they're going to be new services, whatever.
Of course.
So we just have fewer cooks in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Diane's a good Leadership Lincoln fellow too.
Yeah, that's right. We know each other. That's right. Well, see, we don't have to make the argument that we're the best class ever, because really it goes without saying. But also we're the best project group ever, because there's only been one project group, so we can honestly claim that Benny's with me. Yeah. Any other? We'd be happy to take any other questions. I think we're right around 1,600.
Almost 2,000 downloads.
Whoa, that's awesome.
2001, I just did it.
Nice, there it is. So about 2,000 downloads, which is really exciting because it's only been available for about 2 weeks.
Any other questions or any? I know there's got to be lots of stories there in the audience, but we are limited on time.
Of course.
Anything special? Well, we want to thank you very much.
All right.
Brian,
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah.
Now we have Arts and Economic Prosperity, Randy Cohen, and I see several other people coming.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, how many in the audience were here for the first item, and then how many are, first of all, if we could just stand up, anyone we missed that wasn't on the committee? Then is everybody else here for the second item, the Arts and Economic Prosperity? Great, we appreciate you sharing the time.
Yes, thank you to the arts community and our supporters for being here today, and thank you so much to all of you as well for allowing us to be here. A guest that I did want to introduce, oh sure, I'm sorry. Okay, Deb Weber with the Lincoln Arts Council. And one of the guests that's here today is Randy Farmer, and he is the administrator for the Lincoln Public Schools Pathfinder program that is at the Lancaster County Juvenile Detention Center. So Randy, would you stand, please? Thank you for coming. The Lincoln Arts Council has participated in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study for 3 different study years. And so the data that we are going to be presenting today is Arts and Economic Prosperity 5. And today Randy Cohen is here from the Americans for the Arts. He is the Vice President of Research and Policy at the Americans for the Arts, the nation's advocacy organization for the arts. Randy stands out as one of the most noted experts in the field of arts funding, research, policy, and using the arts to address community development issues. He publishes the National Arts Index, the annual measure of the health and vitality of the arts in the U.S., as well as the 2 premier economic studies of the arts industry, Arts and Economic Prosperity. The National Impact Study of Nonprofit Arts Organizations and Their Audiences, and then Creative Industries, an annual mapping study of the nation's 905,000 arts establishments and their employees. Randy is here today as a gift to the city, and we're really excited to have him tell you the findings of the report. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Well, delighted to be with everybody today, and got a good news story to tell, and it's about the arts, but we're going to talk about the arts a little bit differently than we typically do. You know, we think of the arts, we think, you know, beauty and aesthetics and inspiration, food for the soul, that, you know, the thing that creates the communities we want to live in and work in. That's all absolutely true, but we're really going to expand the conversation about the arts, you know, as charity and quality of life, to one of industry that supports jobs, generates government revenue, and is a cornerstone to tourism. Arts and Economic Prosperity, it's an economic impact study of nonprofit arts and culture organizations and their audiences. And this was one of the largest studies of its kind ever conducted. Lincoln was one of 341 study regions from across the country. There you can see on the map, that little dot, that technical effect was all me, so I'm hoping to audition for the last group here. So anyway, that was a wonderful presentation. Looking at, so think about the last time you went to an arts event. You know, if it was a museum exhibition or the theater, you know, did you like slink out of the house, jump in the car, drive there, go in, drive home? No, you know, you probably made an evening of it or an event of it. You know, you have had dinner and dessert or drinks after the show and come home and pay the babysitter. And, you know, sometimes there's maybe a little bit of retail involved, a new necktie or new cufflinks or something like that. We're looking at how spending by these nonprofit arts organizations and the event-related spending on their audiences touch the local economy. As I said, Lincoln was one of 341 study regions from across the country. We're in all 50 states plus DC. We studied communities as small as 1,500 people, as large as 4 million. Doesn't matter if you're in a large urban city, a small rural community, a suburban neighborhood. If the arts are happening there, there's a measurable economic impact. We focus solely on the nonprofit arts and culture organizations, as well as the municipal ones as well. And so in Lincoln, for example, you know, there's city-owned cultural facilities, and so we would include that as well. But So why just the nonprofits? Why not include the Hollywood motion picture industry and, our publishing and printing and for-profit businesses? Because, when the city and the county makes an investment in the arts, those dollars are typically going to nonprofit arts and culture organizations. And it's an appropriate question to ask. All right, in addition to quality of life, what's the public getting in return for that investment economically? And so that's what we set out to do. We started out working with the Arts Council, and you're served by, we are the national organization for the 4,500 arts councils in America, and you're served by a fabulous one here, and Deb and the team, exemplary example of great arts councils and community leadership in the arts. So as in this national local partnership, we surveyed 98 arts and culture organizations right here in Lincoln. Heard back from 40 of them. That's about 50%, is about the national average. But we take a very conservative approach to economic impact. We only use data from the organizations that provide it. So we don't make estimates for non-respondents. So all the numbers I'm talking about start out with those 40 organizations. We can touch every dollar that we talk about here. So what do we find out? Right here, City of Lincoln, total economic activity, $99 million of economic activity in 2015. And that figure, as you can see, is actually composed of two separate numbers. First, spending by the organizations themselves. In this case, just those 40 organizations, $50.7 million in spending. And that right there is a myth buster, right? We all love the arts, they're a wonderful community amenity, but the fact is they're also businesses. They employ people locally, they purchase goods and services in the community, they're members of the Chamber of Commerce and drive tourism. Arts organizations are good business citizens. So like all businesses, they have a measurable economic impact. I could, give everybody here a $5 bill and my economist will chase you down and look at the impact of those transactions. But unlike most industries, the arts generate a lot of event-related spending. And again, think dinner and a show, how those go hand in hand. So we surveyed 1,121 attendees to arts events right here in Lincoln to find out how much does the typical person spend in that event-related spending. Average, $20.86 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. I'll drill down a little bit on that because those are some pretty fascinating numbers in just a moment. But 2.3 million attendees at those 40 cultural organizations. You pack that up, that's how we get that $48.3 million in event-related spending. And you total it up, $99 million. That's the economic activity. But how do we determine economic impact of that? Well, we work with a team of economists at Georgia Tech's School of Economics, and they customize an input-output analysis model for every community that we study. So we had an economic model built specifically for Lincoln. And imagine your worst calculus nightmares. That's what these things start to look like. It looks at how the spending by the arts organizations support jobs at the organizations, but throughout the community. Also the important thing to remember here is, $50 spent in Lincoln is going to have a different economic impact than $50 spent in Omaha. And so that's why we customize these models. These are very locally based. It takes 1 million calculations to come up with just a couple economic impact figures. So what do we find out? Well, what are we all thinking about? Jobs. Every time, right, as a city, as a county leadership, we're always looking at, what's this going to do through the lens of jobs. 2,976 jobs supported right here in Lincoln as a result of that economic activity. Now, again, remember, those aren't just jobs at an arts organization. Think about the last time, you go to an arts event, you're always getting paper, for example, right? You're getting a program, or they're sending you a flyer, a brochure. Well, there's a writer in the city of Lincoln that was paid to write that brochure, that program. There's a graphic artist that does the design work on that. There's a local printer. Arts organizations spend a ton of money on printing. Printers make bank on the arts, because doing all of that work. And so the printers benefit. There's another company that delivers the boxes of the programs back and forth. So just the program at an arts event, touches all these industries in a community. So bottom line, the arts, not just food for the soul, but putting food on the table for 2,976 jobs right here in Lincoln. What's another thing we look at? Government revenue. $9.8 million in revenue to local and state government. It's just about 50-50 between the two. And this shows that when you make your investment in the arts, those dollars aren't disappearing down some black hole of goodness. They're giving back to the community, jobs and government revenue as well as cultural benefits. Nationally, I'll tell you, if you look at all federal, state, and local government funding for the arts, it comes in at about $5 billion. Total revenue, $27.5 billion. Small investment, big return. That's what we get with the arts. All right, now let's drill down a little bit to this audience spending piece, because this is really that value-added aspect. The dinner, the parking, and all those expenses. So 1,121 audience surveys, a huge sample right here, a statistical oversample, almost by a factor of 2. The typical attendee, $20.86 per person per event, not including admission. And you can see how those costs break down. There's meals and, souvenirs, parking. Some of you might be looking at lodging. Wow, can you still get a room here for $1.96? Would you want it if you could get it? No, you wouldn't. Not everybody's got an overnight expense. That's just a portion of folks. I'll talk about that in a minute. I always like to call out other nationally. We did 212,000 of these surveys, and I was just up in Wisconsin, where a farmer paid somebody $60 to milk his cows so he could go to the theater that night. So one of the all-star other categories. So lots of economic activity. So you could just see how this one night out to the theater or going to an exhibition is touching different businesses in the community. But we didn't stop there. We also asked those 1,121 people for their zip code, because we wanted to find out, do they live in the county? Are they residents in Lancaster County, which would make them local, or are they from outside the county, which would make them non-local? 21% of attendees came from outside the county. And do they spend differently? You bet they do. Typical non-local attendee, $42.96 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. Now, we asked those folks yet another question, because we're just that annoying, which was, hey, we're glad you're here, but why are you here? Are you here on business? Are you here visiting friends and family? 64% of those non-local attendees said they came specifically for this arts event. So now you could really see the pulling power of the arts. And we asked the folks who do live here in the county, what if this arts event wasn't taking place? Would you have stayed home, done something else? We gave them a bunch of options. A third of them, 1 in 3, said, I'd travel to a different community to attend a similar kind of arts event. So isn't that interesting? Arts are a discretionary expenditure. We could spend it here, there, not at all. But what this shows is that when we've got this creative, culturally vibrant community that we invest in, that flourishes and thrives, it's keeping our neighbors and their hard-won discretionary dollars right here in town. It's putting cheeks in seats and derrieres and cafe chairs and also heads in beds. So let me tell you, 2.3 million attendees just at those 40 organizations, 21% of them, remember, from outside the county. 15% of those folks had an overnight cost, and they average $121 per person per event. And so, we know, right? You get that head in a bed. That's when the cash registers really start ringing. So great story there. Now, I'm with Americans for the Arts, right? And, we're the arts organization and trying to encourage more support and engagement in the arts. But in Washington, D.C., it's the land of national organizations. There's so many national organizations in D.C. There's a national organization for the national organizations. But you can make this work, because I'm sure most of you are members of one. These are our national partners. And if you go to the Arts Council's website, well, you have the report. If you just flip to the back, you'll see these logos. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, Organizations like Destinations International, they do, that's where the tourism people go. If you're a business leader, you look to see what the conference board does. Those are all partners on your research study because they too believe the arts are a fundamental component of a healthy community, and they buy into the methodology and they buy into the results. If you're a city manager and or a county manager, you might belong to the International City County Management Association, and every month you get your Public Management magazine. Well, the October issue, the cover story is about our Arts and Economic Prosperity study. So this comes with a lot of credibility. It's a methodology that's been vetted by the White House Council of Economic Advisors, Bank of America economists, and again, it's a very conservative approach. A $99 million industry that supports 2,976 jobs and is putting $9.8 million back in local and state government coffers. Let me expand the lens real quickly here because of the importance of the creative economy. And the nonprofits, absolutely an important part of the work that gets done, but there's a lot of other arts and culture that happens in our community. There's, design and publishing and architecture and filmmaking. What about those businesses? So I do another study called Creative Industries, Business and Employment in the Arts. And I use Dun & Bradstreet as my data source. It's the most comprehensive and trusted source for business information in the United States. And so I kind of shinnied up to them and I said, wow, can I carve out all the arts businesses in this country? And I can tell you 4% of the nation's nation's business establishments are arts-centric businesses involved in the creation or the distribution of the arts. Now, drilling down, though, right here to the county, Lancaster County, 597 arts businesses that employ 3,030 people. That's just a list of nonprofit and for-profit businesses tracked by Dun & Bradstreet right here in the county and the number of people they employ. And that is 3.8% of all business establishments tracked by Dun & Bradstreet. So, we're running pretty close to the national average. These are important data because as we think about this global economy we're in and prospering in this global economy, creativity and innovation are what gets us ahead. And those are the kinds of workers and employees we're looking for to attract and retain in our communities. So let me tell you another benefit Lincoln and the county is pulling as a result of this culturally vibrant community that we're living in. I work with an organization, it's the Conference Board, you may have heard of. They give you the leading index of economic indicators, the Consumer Confidence Index. It's the national organization for the Fortune 1000 businesses in this country. Their research shows creativity is now among the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. In fact, it's leapfrog the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. Now, we talk about that as researchers. Of course, you got to be able to read, write, and do math. But if you can take some creativity and apply it to your engineering, your scientific, your technology knowledge, those are the high-paying jobs we're looking to attract and keep in our community. 72% of business leaders say creativity is of high importance in hiring. So we asked them, okay, well, there's no typing test for creativity. How do you know if you got a creative person, on the other side of the table? The 2 biggest indicators of creativity were starting your own business and study of the arts, especially while in college. And so they write in the conclusion of their report, it's clear that the arts, music, drawing, drama, dance, literature, media, provide skills sought by employers of the 3rd millennium. So, and here's how we connect the dots on this. This new economy workforce is behaving very differently, certainly than when I came up. I got out of college and, I packed up my 64 Dodge Dart with a punch button automatic and I go to whoever'd have me. I went to the job. It was already an old car. But workers these days are doing it differently. They're picking the communities that they want to live in and moving there and figuring they'll make it work. It's a domestic phenomenon. It's an international phenomenon. And this is actually the 75th city I've been in since June. And I can tell you, I've heard in so many places people say our #1 export is highly educated young people. I mean, brutal, right, in this economy. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we stem that brain drain and actually turn that into a brain gain? And they, there's HR research studies, all kinds of studies where they've asked these young new economy workers, what's going to bring you here and keep you here? And the answers are consistent regardless of the language spoken. You want me to be creative and innovative in the workplace? I'm a creative person. I want arts and culture in my community. I want arts maker spaces. I want great restaurants. Think of the culinary arts in a cool downtown. Who doesn't, right? So that's what's pulling workers these days. And it doesn't have to be a big city. It's all kinds of cities, mid-sized, small communities. People are moving for the places that they want to live in these days, and then figure they'll make it work. Start my own business. I'll hook on with an incubator. There's, cross-sector interest. So lots of benefit that are also coming economically to the community as a result of the arts. So let me wrap up with just one more, because this now reminds us of the importance of arts education. Because how do we build, how do we grow, how do we nurture that creative workforce? And obviously this is something we all worry about, right? Academic performance and dropout rates and all that type of thing. The research is so powerful about the benefits of arts when they're in the schools. I'll tell you some incredible research by a UCLA researcher named James Catterall, who studied Department of Education data on 25,000 students at 1,000 schools across the country. So nationally representative sample. And what he did is he divided those students into 4 quartiles based on their level of arts involvement. So, up here at the top, practices violin 3 hours a day and, works your way down, gets to the museum once a year. And he compared academic performance to the arts involved and the non-arts involved kids. And what he found is those students with the higher levels of arts involvement had better grade point averages, better standardized test scores, lower dropout rates, even better attitudes about community service. Now, he anticipated the question some of you might be thinking, well, yeah, but, aren't those arts-involved students from better educated, more affluent families? We'd expect them to do better, perhaps. So he went back to his base of 25,000 students and looked at just the lowest socioeconomic quartile. So students in low-income communities, attending Title I schools. And just within that group, he did the same analysis. And what he found, not only did the results hold, but there was an even greater disparity between the arts involved and the non-arts involved kids. Helping educators and researchers then think, maybe the arts help level the playing field, or kids who got a late start to catch up. Now, if you look at Department of Education data on the provision of arts education nationally, the last couple decades, we've seen kind of a steady decline, a slight decline. But in those low-income communities and Title I schools, there's been a huge, significant drop-off. In fact, that cohort is 8 times more likely to lose their arts education than typical students. And a severe enough problem that the U.S. Secretary of Education called that a civil rights issue. Because Catterall's research not only looked at how those students are doing in grades K through 12, but he's actually tracked them into their 20s. And there's still, as young adults, measurable differences between the arts involved and the non-arts involved students. More likely to have attended some college, more likely to be in career-oriented jobs, less criminal involvement. So powerful, powerful research on really just this trajectory of our future workforce, of young people, of academic performance. I'll say the Arts Council works closely with the school district here. There's amazing arts education. I think, probably still need more, I would guess. But that's something that we also need to keep our eye on as well. And just one more benefit that comes with this creative, culturally vibrant community. And really what we're talking about here is, how do you build a healthier Lincoln through the arts? Socially, educationally, economically. You've got some great handouts with you. I'd point you to the second page, 10 Reasons to Support the Arts in Lincoln, which talks about a lot of these, ranging from healthcare. I think it's this packet. It's got this information on the front. So let me just wrap up here. Arts are a big business right here. Arts are good for the economy. They're supporting jobs. When you invest in the arts, you're not investing in a frill or an extra. You're investing in something, an industry that provides both quality of life, cultural benefits, and is a boom for the economy. So thanks very much. And I'll take questions if you have any.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's great to be back.
Love your energy. Okay. So I don't know if you can do this, but Lincoln is one community. You've looked at a whole bunch of other communities. Can you compare what we're doing here with what other cities are doing? I guess what I'm wondering is, what are we doing well? What could we do? What could we be doing better?
Yeah. Doing a lot well, and I'll tell you this, if you look in the report and compare Lincoln to other communities in its population group, it's running ahead of the median. So in terms of that $99 million is a little above average. The number of jobs supported above average. So the good numbers are good and strong here. And I'll say this, it's a growth industry. If you look at the study that was done before this one in 2000, our down economy, we all remember 2000, it was $53 million back then. And so what we've seen is pretty significant growth. And so compares strong in the big macro measures to other communities, and even within Lincoln, it's a growth industry. In terms of, things that can be done, obviously, when the appropriation comes around every year, making sure we're supporting the arts. These arts organizations depend on the city and the county and the state's investment. They use that to leverage dollars from the private sector. And that supports those organizations who are working with the schools, working with healthcare organizations, social service organizations, youth detention facilities. You can really see your investment in the arts being pushed throughout the community. And that's really, I think, obviously, more money means more product, which means more economic impact. But, what do you do the other 364 days a year? And I always challenge every community to look at your committees and commissions and advisory, all the different kinds of citizen engagement we have, right? We got, commission for airports and streets and roads and signage. Is there artist representation on all of those? Because what the artists can do is they make good decisions, better decisions. I'll just give you a couple examples of just places I've been in the last couple months. Kansas City, Missouri just built a fabulous new public library right downtown. Incredible architecture, totally cool inside and out, technology, maker spaces. It's really amazing. And next to it is a 3-story parking garage, which, when they built it, looked like a 3-story parking garage. So, it's like, that's kind of a rough juxtaposition on the eye. I thought, what can we do about that? And so the artists came up with that idea. They did this big public process where they asked everyone in the community, what were your favorite books growing up or your most influential reads? And, everyone got engaged and involved, and there were thousands and thousands of submissions. And they came up with a list of 21 books. And then the artists created these 3-story tall Mylar screens, which look like the spines of a book. And they were applied onto the parking garage. And basically, you go and stand across the street, it looks like a 3-story tall, 1 block long library bookshelf. It's the coolest thing. You know how much a parking garage costs. That's millions and millions of dollars. This was a fraction of that, and it's become this community amenity. I was visiting, and I was with a friend of mine who's a VP at Hallmark. And he was telling me, he said, business people come from out of town now, and they'll say, hey, listen, on the way to the airport, can we stop by? I want to see that library garage with the books I always heard about. I was in Phoenix, Arizona 20 years ago. They had to build a new solid waste treatment facility, and they thought, all right, well, it's a dump, right? How can we make this better for the people who work there, and help people understand their ecological footprint a little bit more, maybe. And so they had artists part of the team that envision, design, build the Phoenix dump. Short story, that's where 250,000 people a year go now to see the rotating art exhibits at the Phoenix dump. If you can make your cement parking garage and your dump a feature in your community, You know, you can make the arts happen anywhere. I was up in Seattle. You know, Seattle's trying to brand themselves as a music city. And so they've got something called the Music on Hold program, where you call, "Hi, City of Seattle, please hold." And while you're on hold, you listen to only Seattle musicians. And you know, the city already spent $10 million on the phone system, right? They've just got a coordinator level person at the Arts Council who every quarter changes the local music. And it was so popular, the last mayor said, "Hi, this is Mayor Mike Nichols. You're listening to, you know, Seattle Music on Hold, and go to this website and buy the music." And, you know, and so there's so many areas where we're already making major infrastructure investments in technology and buildings and dumps and parking garages. How can we make those creative features in a community as well? So, a couple examples. Yeah.
Great, well, that's exciting, very energetic.
Yeah.
Maybe to conclude and bring it full circle again, define for us again what you consider the arts, because it's been fun as going,
Sure,
for me
that's
anyway,
a-
I've been trying to think through, because there are many forms, and I'm thinking of entertainment, performances. We are very blessed to have a number of facilities here, and
Yeah, Lincoln's a great art city for sure, and the whole area. We take the big umbrella in this. So it's, you know, the theaters, the museums, the performing arts organizations, it's your arts education organizations. We consider zoos, botanical gardens, you know, part of arts and culture. What else? I mean, so it's a big inclusive type of umbrella.
thank you very much. Ms. Weber, do you have any further comments?
No, but thank you so much for listening today. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to everyone in the audience. You showed a lot
Yes,
of good
thank
support
you.
there.
All right.
Well, if there's
Yeah.
any other business before us,
I will move we adjourn.
Second.
okay, moved and seconded, we adjourn.
Let me call the roll.
Sure.